So welcome back. Interrogations. So interrogations work like this. First, before you get interrogated, there's what is called an interview, where the police talk to you and they kind of get the story. Like, they have you talk about the story of whatever the crime that has been committed, and they use certain cues such as nervous behavior, stuttering, certain words that you'll use that could trigger you into an interrogation. Now, once you get into a interrogation, that's where the police decide whether or not what they're going to use to get you to confess. Now, this article I found on web.mit.edu, it's by Dylan Kurz, and it talks about how police use psychology manipulation to interrogate citizens. Now, it's not... The thing about that is that I feel like this article is kind of one-sided. That it talks about how kind of like the police are after you and that they'll do anything to get you to confess. That is true to some extent, but what they really are is they're kind of tricking your mind in a way that is manipulation, and that is kind of wrong. Now, he states that the police, the way it works is that he says that the police will... Alright, so what this guy says is that, quote unquote, when the police want to question you about a crime in the past, the path the questioning took only went a couple of ways. The path the questioning took only went a couple of ways. Okay, be in mind, this is an MIT. This is on the MIT website. The police accuse you of a crime. Yes, they are accusing you of a crime. Yes, they accuse you of a crime after the interrogation. They think you're the suspect. Then they read you the rights. They only read you the rights only if they're going to be questioning you. So when you get arrested, they don't have to read you the rights. It depends on the policy of the police department. All different police departments have different policies. Sometimes they don't interrogate sometimes they don't have to read you the Miranda right. Yes, they do have to at some point, but only for interrogation, interrogational purposes. Anyways, and then he says, okay, and then try to convince you to confess by telling you all the bad things that could happen to you if you didn't tell the truth. Now, that is true to some extent. Now, what the police are trying to do is they will tell you use different techniques. Now, I'm going to get into the different techniques in a second, but they're going to try, that's what they are, they're trying to get you to confess in an interrogation. That's what their job is to do, is to get you to confess, but they're just trying to get you to tell the truth, because at this point they probably think you're lying about your story, or there's something that they think is just, shifty, and there's a lot of faults in that, but we'll talk about that later. So yeah, they're trying to get you to confess. Then now, the thing is that he's putting it as that all these bad things are going to happen if you don't tell the truth. Now, nothing's bad going to happen to you. Yes, prison sucks, but that's only if you're proven guilty. Now, you're like, now you're innocent until proven guilty. So, yes, they're gonna tell you that things will happen to you in prison if you're proven guilty. Now, those are just stressors to stress you more, which could be bad or good. So, like I said, again, this article is called Dominance and Submission, How the Police Use Psychology Manipulation to Interrogate Citizens. Now, it's by Dylan Kurz. Now, this is an MIT. This is on the MIT.edu website, and I think it's all, I mean, it does have some good factual information, but it's all kind of one-sided, going against and bashing on police and interrogations, which it's not cool. It's not cool, man. I don't like the hater. Okay, next. Okay. Now, interrogation technique that you'll come across a lot, I guess. You'll see them in movies, and this is probably, if you ever get interrogated, this is probably what you're gonna think how it's gonna go down is, which is bad cop versus good cop. Now, they'll have two detectives or interrogators whomever come in and talk to you and be like, one will be like all calm and soothing and be like, hey, just tell us the truth. And the other one will probably be screaming in your face, swearing, cussing, playing not by the rules, or what I think I like to call a Dirty Harry. Now, those who don't know what a Dirty Harry is that it's a movie. And in the movie, he's kind of a loose cannon. Really good movie. You should watch it. But anyways, this Dirty Harry, he's gonna get in your face. He's not gonna physically touch you because by policies, they're not allowed to touch you or hurt you. But, yeah, he's gonna get in your face, he's gonna swear, he's gonna get steeped to levels that are just gonna make you probably angry and snap, and then after a while, they're gonna have the bad cop go away. He's gonna be like, you know what, I need a breather, or the good cop's gonna be like, yo, go get some coffee or something like that, and the bad cop's gonna walk out. The person being interrogated is going to feel less calm and more likely to talk to the good cop. Now, next technique that is used is the Reid technique. Now, this is a government website. This is my state's government website, so it's called ORL Research Report. Interrogation Techniques, that's the name of it, and it's by James Orlando, associate, who's an associate attorney. But this is on cga.ct.gov. Yep, so the Reid technique, according to him, the Reid technique involves three components: factual analysis, interviewing, and interrogation. Alright, factual analysis is the first part of the Reid technique. Now, this is kind of a profile that the interrogators have set up on who they think did the crime, or who they think the unsub is. So, this can be like a description of what the man looks like his skin color, eye color, height, and etc. Now, this is where this begins, is that they begin saying things like, hey, you match the profile, and that we're going to interrogate you, blah, blah, blah. Tell us if you did it or not, and yeah, pretty much it. Next is behavioral analysis interview. The behavioral analysis interview. Now, according to the website I mentioned before, the ct.gov or James Orlando, it's an inductive approach where each individual suspect, read that wrong part. Reid describes the behavioral analysis interview as a non-accusatory question and answer session involving both standard investigative questions and structured behavior-provoking questions to elicit behavioral symptoms of truth or deception from the person being interviewed. So what this means is that the investigator will ask you questions, normal questions like who you are, whom you are, what you are, where you're from, where you live, etc. Now, what they're doing that for is trying to study your normal behavior on normal questions. Next, they'll Next, they'll ask behavior-provoking questions, which will be kind of like questions that put you on your edge. I don't know what an example would that be. Probably asking things like, "Oh, do you?" or "Why did you do it?" Like things like that. I think that would be good behavioral provoking, because if they ask you, "Oh, why'd you do it?" or something like that, you're probably going to react, be like, "No, I did not do it," changing your behavior. And yeah. The interrogation, next in the Reid technique. So you're only, again, brought to the interrogation if the investigator is convicting you of, or thinks, not convicting, has probable cause that you are involved in the crime. So next is, so there are like 9 steps of the Reid technique that they'll start to use. They'll use positive confrontation, theme development, handling denials, overcoming objections, procurement and retention of suspect's attention, handling the suspect's passive mood, presenting the alternative question, having the suspect orally relate various details of the offense, converting an oral confession to a written confession. So that's what he says. What this James Orlando guy says that the steps of the Reid technique are. So essentially, what they'll do is, in the Reid technique, is they'll put a lot of pressure on you. So not just in the Reid technique, but the police will put you in a small, very, very small room, smaller than my room, and it's pretty big. They'll put you in a small room. Sometimes they'll put you in a room with no windows in it and very poor lighting. usually there's a one-way mirror, or one-way window, whatever you call it. And what they'll do is they'll kind of like keep asking you questions, and over, maybe some of them will probably repeat, and they'll sit you down and have you sit there probably for hours, and what they'll essentially do is say things like, oh, we'll do like an evidence ploy, which they'll say, hey, this person is actually still alive, or they'll say a witness saw you did it, or like I said, this person that got murdered, say it was a murder case, saw you did it, and that they're actually still alive, and they pulled through, and they saw you did it, and they confirmed that you did it. Now they'll try to develop a theme, and they'll probably throw a few at you, and you won't, at this time, you probably won't notice the themes. They'll just be asking questions, like, how do you know the person that is murdered, or how do you know whatever, such and such. And they're gonna, whatever behavior you inflict, they're gonna feed off that behavior. That makes sense. So if you're at this point, usually people act tough when they talk about, oh, they won't break me and all that, but when you're sitting there for hours in a small confined room with very poor lighting, and you're possibly could be convicted of a crime that you may or may not know that you did, then you're probably gonna break. And that's what the Reid technique focuses on, is that it focuses on a confession. And a lot of police departments use that. Not only the police departments, but the FBI use this technique to put a lot of pressure on the person that's being interrogated. And essentially they're just trying to pry this confession out of you, so they're going to use whatever, like, evidence ploys, what else is there? What they're going to do is that, what they're going to do is, try to create this, like I said, they're going to try to create a desire of you trying to, like, escape. You're just going to be like, you're going to want to get out of there. So, again, they'll social, like, isolate you, which will increase anxiety and whatnot. And again, that's where they're going to put in evidence ploys, because they're going to be certain that you're guilty, certainty of guilt. So they're going to be putting evidence ploys that can be such things as, like, a phony lineup saying, hey, so-and-so witnessed you in the lineup, even though they probably didn't, or they recognized you from TV. They're like, hey, you, again, like I said, the victim or whomever getting robbed identified you. they'll also do things like have undercover detectives sit in the cell and be like, hey man, what'd you do? Or act like they were in prison too, but really they're just trying to get you to confess. A good example of the Reid technique is the Central Park 5. Now this case happened, I forget when, before I was born. And I think it was the 90s when this happened, and a good example of the Reid technique is the Central Park 5, where essentially is these 5 boys were convicted of rape and assault on a white woman, and I should say that these 5 men, they were black, so it was kind of like a racial case. A lot happened in this case, and they were convicted because they all confessed. Every single one of them confessed. Now the problem with that case is that their alibis, or not their alibis, their confessions, their stories, they were all not in sync with each other. There's a lot of evidence showing that there was another suspect that wasn't the 5 boys, and essentially these boys were convicted because solely on their confessions, which is pretty sad. Alternative techniques and like things we can do to fix them. Now, first off, what we can do is try not to use the Reid technique. I don't think that police departments they could use whatever technique they want. It depends on the interrogators, but I don't think interrogators should use the Reid technique because it causes a lot of stress, and I think it causes a lot of false confessions. And another thing that can be fixed is police departments using just a confession as evidence. If they don't have any other evidence other than, like, if they don't have any physical evidence, then I think they should just kind of like brush that aside and be like, hey, this story doesn't match up with the scene. They should like really look at it, because once a police or investigator gets or detective or whomever gets that confession, they go hoorah, they start partying, bring out their drinks or whatever, and they start celebrating because they got a confession, that's not a good thing. What else could they do? They can also probably create better places to do these interrogations, like more lighting, more open space, not in such a confined room. I'm not saying they shouldn't lie, but they shouldn't just create something crazy, because there are pretty crazy evidence points. Now, an alternative to the Reid technique would be the peace technique, which is used in a lot of the foreign countries, big in England. Now, piece technique, according to whom is this? Jeff Laskey of SmoreThanLaw.com, which he talks about police interrogation, and in here he does compare the Reid and piece technique. Now, according to him, scroll past all this. Piece technique of police interrogation is a less coercive and less manipulative alternative to the Reid technique. And piece stands for participation in planning, engage and explain, account, closure, evaluate. Now, what they do differently in the piece technique is they don't put any stress at all. Yeah, sorry about that. My stepmother came in. So essentially what the piece technique is that they don't put any stress, like high amounts of stress, on the person being interrogated. They don't focus on the confession. What else do they do? Essentially what it is that when they're using the piece technique, they're focusing on the story. Because cognitively, we have this part of our brain that doesn't really allow us to lie, and so we'll self-correct ourselves, which is kind of a really bad thing, because then it changes the story that we're talking about. So people will say you're telling a story that isn't true, and so he'll be going over the details over again, and you'll probably change something in your story. So they get you to talk, and the longer you talk, the more they're gonna get out of you. And usually this is not done in like tight spaces or anything. They usually put you down in a comfortable room, comfortable chairs, a lot of lighting, and they make you feel comfortable. Stress is not at an all-time high, and essentially it's a really good, I think it's a really good type of interrogation or technique that the United States should adapt. They haven't adapted it yet, but they should. What else would there be talked about? I think that pretty much wraps it up for today. Anything I missed? I think that's good with, I think, English. My English is not good today. My mouth is really dry. I think that's all going to be for today, for this episode. If I missed anything, say something in the comment section. Comment section. And correct me on my mistake. I'll put the links to these 3 websites down in the description below. No work cited, MLA format. So tune in for next episode. I don't know what we're gonna talk about. I don't know what I'm gonna do for these episodes. I'll probably be talking about things that happen with police officers and all that, and yeah. Thank you for watching.